Anxiety, which is what I'm going to talk about, is a natural and adaptive response to situations in which we feel fear, in which we feel uncertainty, or in which we feel threatened in some way. So, in other words, our lives right now in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic. So no one is unscathed, right? We are collectively feeling anxious. And, let's talk a little bit about anxiety. Anxiety is, we have our brain, and we have our primitive part of our brain, which is the limbic system. That's the kind of fight or flight part that developed evolutionarily because there were some very real threats when back in primitive days, and so we have adapted to develop this part of our brain to keep us safe. Fast forward millennia, and our brains developed more, including the development of a prefrontal cortex, which is more of our thinking brain or rational brain. So we have our kind of primitive emotion reactive brain, and we have our rational thinking brain. And these really come into play when we talk about anxiety and the management of anxiety. So how do we feel anxiety? How do we experience anxiety? Well, we experience it, number one, in our bodies. You all know what I'm talking about. With anxiety, we have an increase in heart rate. We can feel a tight chest. Our stomach can be in a knot. We can have dry mouth. We can feel shaky. These are all the physical sensations that are associated with anxiety. We also feel it in our minds, right? And that's where I think a lot of us really are experiencing it. We may not be to the point of, always feeling shaky and panicky, but we can feel it in our minds in the sense of racing thoughts, rumination, what ifs, worst case scenario. And again, this is, I think all of us are feeling this now. Anxiety is really a spectrum. You can have mild anxiety where you just, are kind of ruminative, worried, all the way up to frank panic. And panic is, when I talked about feeling it in our bodies, when people are experiencing a panic attack, they really feel it in their bodies, to the point where they oftentimes will go to the emergency room because they think they're having a heart attack. When in a panic attack, people mostly, their primary thought is one of overwhelming doom and, like something horrible is going to happen. And they really get a lot of physical sensation. I mean, hopefully, most of you are not having anxiety to the point of full-blown panic. But if you are, that's just a signal to you that it's time to take a look around and look at your lives and what can you do on a daily basis, a la Kaylee and her mindfulness meditation instruction that might keep you more in kind of a steady state, feeling of calm. So, when we feel it in our bodies, we feel it in our minds, that can lead to certain behaviors. And what are those behaviors as a result of anxiety? Well, one thing that happens to people is they have trouble sleeping. Insomnia is a big, one of the hallmark symptoms of anxiety. The other thing that happens to people is, remember when I said that knotted feeling in your stomach? That's the other thing that can happen. So people get that knotted feeling, and what do? They lose their appetite. What do they do when they lose their appetite? They stop eating, okay? And that's not so healthy. And then the other, the other kind of behavior is, you can just be very agitated, and you can have cognitive behaviors where you just ruminate over and over and over again. So, so then the question is, okay, we're all living in this state of mild panic and anxiety. What to do about it? Well, I mean it when I say, I think it's really great that Kaylee's presentation preceded mine, because the methods that she laid out are really tried and true methods known to decrease anxiety. The other thing I would say about that is our impulse when we're really anxious is to do something, right? When we are, if any of you have ever been driving your car and you took a turn into a field for whatever reason and it was muddy and you're stuck in the mud, you panic and you put your foot on the accelerator in an attempt to get out, and what happens? It just makes the situation worse. So, same thing if we're driving here in New England, it's icy. We've all been instructed when you're starting to skid, turn into the skid. What's our impulse though is turn away from the skid. So similarly with anxiety, our impulse is to do something, but really we need to just sit there. We need to sit. And it feels counterintuitive, but not doing anything and simply sitting, breathing, and focusing all attention on, I really think focusing all your attention on your breathing is a way to bring it down. And they've done studies that show, the deep breath in and hold it for a couple beats, and then the deep breath out, that actually can lower heart rate, and that can calm down, the limbic system, the part of the brain that is so agitated. So that is one thing that can be very, very helpful to do in the midst of an anxiety attack, and also just in your day, during the day, just so that you get in the habit of kind of mindful focus on breathing. The other thing is that we need to pay attention. Sometimes when we're anxious, we forget about ourselves and we forget about our most basic needs. So it's important when you're feeling anxious to stop yourself and say, wait a minute, what do I need right now? Do I need a glass of water? It can be that basic. Do I need to eat something? When's the last time I moved around? When's the last time I had a conversation with somebody? I mean, think about what you need. The other thing is, it's really, one of the very, what I think a very good antidote to anxiety is movement. And ideally, movement that is outside. So there is something about the combination of being able to move our bodies, be outdoors, and experience all the sensations that come with being outdoors. Especially this time of year, we can hear the birds singing. We can feel the sun. We can have a day like today, which feels more like February. I just decided the other day I'm going to pretend it's February, and then maybe I won't feel quite as cold. It's supposed to be May, and we're supposed to be kind of like shedding our winter coats, but we're not. But if you can get outside every day for a walk, even if it is a 10-minute walk, that in and of itself can really help to calm down. Bring your mask along, of course. The other thing that I think that is important to get into the habit of is recognizing that as mothers and mothers to be, we have a really complex role. And let's face it, what do mothers do? They take care of. They are taking care of things at home. They are taking care of things at work. They are taking care of the household. And sometimes what gets lost in all that caretaking is caretaking of ourselves. And I think that if nothing else sticks with you after this, program today, is the importance of the need to really mother yourself, to take care of yourself. And that can mean enlisting others. Social support is another powerful antidote to anxiety and stress. I think we as humans are programmed to want to kind of clump together in times of distress. And as other panelists have pointed out, we hear a lot about social distancing, but really what we're talking about is physical distancing. So you have to maintain social contacts during this time of anxiety. And I think, you know, motherhood, and, you know, for all of you moms out there getting ready to deliver your babies, that postpartum period is a time, even under the best of circumstances, of a fair amount of isolation and social isolation. So I think it's, you know, you all have to kind of go into this knowing how important your support systems are, and reaching out for help is. You know, the other thing that can be really helpful with managing anxiety, if, you know, let's say you can't get out for a walk, well, you know, you have kids at home, you can't get away, even though that is probably what is a number one request for all moms is, can I just have 5 minutes to myself, right? But there was a really interesting study done about 20 years ago, actually, where the researchers took 3 groups of people. One was a control group, so nothing, you know, they just didn't do anything. Another group, the other 2 groups were told to write. And one group specifically was told, we want you to think of some, you know, anxiety-provoking, traumatic experience. And we want you to spend the next, you know, week writing down every day your deepest and innermost thoughts and feelings about that. The other group, they instructed to just spend the next week writing down what you did for the day. Just kind of what was your daily structure, what did you eat, who did you hang out with, what were your tasks for the day. And at the end of this study, they found that the people in the group who wrote down their innermost thoughts and their innermost feelings actually had a greater sense of well-being, less depression, less anxiety down the road. So there's great value in writing. But make sure that when you are writing, to get full benefit, you're really writing down your feelings. And so I think what I would like to leave you with is one other thought, and that is that all of you are far more resilient than you give yourselves credit for, I'm assuming. You're also resourceful, and you're also you've been through scary and hard and uncertain times before in your lives. And this is another one. And for those of you having a baby during this time, it is the double whammy, because as the other panelists have pointed out, and I think you'll hear in a few minutes from others, you know, as much as we can plan the perfect birth, we never really know what's going to happen, right? We all have these beautiful pregnancies, and then the unintended, not so beautiful delivery. Speaking from experience. So I think that, you know, we have to remember that we as women are strong, we are powerful, you are all great mothers. Even when you don't have your finest moments, you have to remember humans make mistakes. Mothers are humans. We're going to make mistakes. Our job is to pick up, dust off, not criticize ourselves, not compare ourselves to others, because what really matters is you, your world, your baby, and your family.